Hey guys, so today we're going to be dealing with compound interest as part of interest and depreciation. Let's quickly go through some of the prior knowledge that you need to know in order to do this. You need to know how to work with percentages, equations, how to sub into a formula, and how to round off. So what is compound interest? Well, it's quite simple. Compound interest is where we keep adding interest to the original principal that we have, and we keep adding it and adding interest on top of that, and then we have a new principal, and we keep going. So we can compound interest either monthly, quarterly, 6 monthly, daily, or whenever really, but the question will tell you when it is. Now with compound interest, we use a formula. And the formula is very simple, so you might want to write it down. The formula is future value equals the present value, 1 plus r. R is the rate as a fraction. Now some textbooks will say write it as a decimal. They're both fine. To the power of n, which is the number of periods. So let's have a look at some examples that we have. So the first example says that Sharon invested this much for 5 years at that rate per annum. That means that is a rate per year, but she wants to compound monthly, or the account is compounded monthly. So the question is asking to calculate the value, the end value, and we know we can do that by using our present value and our future value formula. So the formula is future value equals the present value, which is 8,600 given in the question, times 1 plus the rate as a fraction, so 7.5 over 100. Now the rate's as a fraction, but that rate is per year, and we want to know per month. So we're going to divide that by 12, and that's our whole rate there. All to the power of n, the number of periods. So it tells us for 5 years, but because it's monthly, we do 5 times 12. That's how many total periods there will be. Now, when we chuck this in the calculator, very important to use brackets, and I'm going to add another bracket just up here because the calculator needs that in order to do that power. When we type all of that in the calculator, we get this value here. This is the future value of her investment, $12,498.33. And I rounded off to 2 decimal places because when we deal with money, we round off to the nearest cent. Now let's look at the next example. Part B of this says, calculate the interest earned. Well, we know how much she originally put in. We know how much it turned out to be. So the difference between the two will be the interest, and that's what we do here. So the interest is $3,898.33. Hopefully you understood example 1. Let's move on to example 2. Example 2 says that $180,000 was invested for 5 years. It grew to a future value of this much. Wait, so they've given me the future value already? Okay, let's keep reading. If the interest was compounded annually, find the interest rate. Okay, this question's asking me to find the interest rate, correct to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to chuck what I know into the formula. Well, they've given me the future value, and they gave me the present value, and they gave me the number of periods, but they didn't give me R. So I put everything there you can see in the black into the formula. Now I'm going to have to use equations to get R by itself. So the first thing I do is I divide both sides by 180,000 to get rid of that. And I get this. Now, to get rid of the power of 5, I need to use the root 5. And every calculator will be different, but on the Casio ones, it's on top of the X power button. And so we do that to both sides, and we get this, and now we have 1 left. So how do we get rid of plus 1? Minus 1 from both sides. Now that gives me a rate as a decimal, but I want the rate as a percentage. So I times it by 100, 2 hops, and I get 3.77%. Now I round it off to 2 decimal places because that's what the question is asking for. So you can always use any formula and rearrange it and find an unknown. In this case, we found R when everything else was given. Let's go on to the last example. Now the last example says how much interest was earned. Okay, so they want to know interest, and that's important. I always underline what the question is asking me to find out so that when I go to check my answers, I can make sure I've done what they've asked me. So this is asking how much interest was earned when $135,000 is invested for 5 years at 4.8% per annum compounded yearly. It's always easier when the compound's yearly. It does change, however, when that duration changes, as we saw in example 1. So I chuck everything into the formula, I put that in the calculator, and I find that's what my future value is going to be. But that's not what the question asks. The question asks for the interest. So just like we did in 1b, we're going to do the interest equals whatever the future value is minus the present value. When I calculate that, I figure out that this investment found interest of $35,663.32. Hopefully you understood those three examples. I've got 3 quick questions here that I'd like you to do. Pause the video, work through them, and then unpause them to go through their recommended answers. Okay, so you should be done by now. Let's go through and check them all off. Hopefully that gave you a better understanding of compound interest. Thank you very much.